I think a lot of gamers, they dignify the numerical rating that was used to represent the substance of a video game more than the substance that was actually expressed about the video game. Where reviewers, they make their reviews to highlight the substance, the merits, the shortcomings, the potential of a video game experience. But too often do we as gamers watch a video review, hear a video review, read a video review, and then afterwards we are more concerned about how they represented the review rather than the review itself. We're more concerned about the fact that they gave our favorite game a 5 instead of a 9.5 than we are about what they actually said about our favorite video game. And I think that's completely messed up. That's the complete opposite way of going about your reviews. I remember having friends who would ask me on my advice on purchasing certain products. You know, what capture card should I get? and I would tell them, and there was a time where a friend, he got mad at me because that capture card did not suit his needs. But what I told him was that people love this capture card. It's a great capture card, you know, get that. But he didn't really ask me what his needs were. He didn't really even know himself completely what his needs were. But I feel like that moment was an example of how people dignify too much of how someone represents a product rather than the product's merits itself. You know, don't just buy this capture card because it's the most popular and people give it an A out of, you know, an A grade or a 10 out of 10. That you shouldn't be concerned about that. What you should be concerned about is, what does it do for you? What is it about? What capabilities does it have? And what is the potential of this product? Not about the number that they gave the product. That's trivial. That's really trivial in the grand scheme of things for most of us, I feel. Sometimes that could be used for a developer's perspective for them to take advantage of what was done right and what was done wrong. But it's a very streamlined representation of how someone feels. But the thing about our symbols and what we use to represent how we feel is that it's a bit ambiguous. Like most verbalizations, it's a bit ambiguous, where one person's 8 can be another person's 5. One person's 5 can be another person's 3. And I find it kind of ridiculous to get upset at the number that they used rather than the reason they gave it the number. Because, again, one person's 5 can be another person's 3. To say, oh, well, it deserves much higher than an 8. How do you know that? Because you aren't in that reviewer's mind. You don't know by which merits they classify those numbers. I think a great example of this is to look to real life, especially in American culture. Something that's very popular for us to do as Americans is to rank someone in attractiveness from 1 to 10. And if you ask enough people, what you will realize is that some people's idea of what it means to be an average looker is different from person to person. One person may say a 7 represents an average person, and average to me is a sort of attractive. And another person would say 5.5, because statistically speaking, it's right in the middle, around the middle from 1 to 10. And for that reason, 5.5 has to represent average for me. And to me, average is a little bit not attractive enough. And then another person will completely throw the rules out of the window and they will say, well, I think a 3 or a 2 represents the average person. And so that's an example of how different we can feel the meaning of what it means to be average and what it means to be a particular number. And so how can you really disagree about something when in reality you might very well be saying the same thing? I think another thing that gamers do is that they assume that a number is representative of how that person feels about a game, when this is not wholly true when it comes to reviewers, especially of the professional variety. Sometimes professional reviewers, they consider a lot of variables, more variables than your typical reviewer. They will consider how well of a work of art it was, how well crafted it was, and how well of a piece of code and engineering and technology it was. And so that plays on how they rank a game. Where it's not just about, oh, I love this game. Sometimes a reviewer may rank a game low, but they may love that game. Like, for example, Brink. If I were to review Brink, I would give it a low score. But I don't hate that game. There are other games that I will give a similar score that I hate more than Brink, that I can't tolerate. But it's because I'm considering more than just that. because a video game is a work of art in some respects, because artists do put their time into coloring, drawing, designing, all the things like that, coming up with concepts. And then it also is a piece of technology, like much like a car or an engine, where it's supposed to get a job done, and you have to question how efficient and effective it was at completing that job. And so video games are a unique type of product, because all of those things have to be considered, I feel, if you were to really criticize every aspect of the game. Now, another thing that I think a lot of gamers don't really acknowledge, how some individuals have played more games of a certain genre than the next guy. And that's going to have a very drastic effect on how they represent a game and how it sways them emotionally. If you play every single shooter that's ever played, you're going to be very desensitized to shooters, because you've been pretty much training yourself in playing shooters. So it's not going to have as big of an impact as you as a player as it would someone who's new to shooters. Some reviewers, that number represents a comparison. For some reviewers, that comparison is of a different catalog of games. For some reviewers, they have a different meaning of what it means to be average. They have a different meaning of what it means to be great. And some reviewers don't feel like their number is indicative of how it made them feel as a person. They leave that up for the written review, for the vocal, verbalized review. That is supposed to express how they feel, and the number is not so much. So I feel like gamers, if they went into reviews in the right way, they would dignify more of the substance that was highlighted, about the potential, the shortcomings, the what is, and not so much about what you use to represent what is. That doesn't matter. What matters is actuality, not how you define it. And so I feel like that's how I feel on the matter. Tell me how you guys feel. Hope you enjoyed. I'm out. Peace.